On today's podcast, we are pleased to be joined by my good friend and NHL alumni, Jean-Luc Grand-Pierre, who I've known for some time. I've actually coached his son, Denon, and we have a good long chat here about, his experiences, both playing, coaching, and parenting, really. And there's a lot to dig into there, huh, Greg?
Absolutely. I love that we went through every single stage. You get your coaches, you got your players, but even we talked about parents. And I think that was the greatest thing that he talked about was from the parenting perspective, because he found himself going down that rabbit hole of the parent he didn't want to be, where he's pushing his kid. And he just backed off, and suddenly that passion came from his kid, and, let him do what he wants to do and just enjoy the rink as a parent. So I thought that was cool. I think the greatest line he had is, your kid isn't you. Let the kid be who he is or who she is. I love that. And then also the multi-sport athlete and utilizing all these other experiences and then transferring into hockey, I thought was super valuable.
Yeah, super fun conversation, and I think you guys are really going to enjoy this one. So without further ado, here's our conversation with Jean-Luc Grand-Pierre. We are pleased to join on the podcast today a friend of mine and NHL alumni, Jean-Luc Grand-Pierre. JL, how you doing today?
I'm good, Dan. Excited to be on your podcast.
Yeah, thanks for being here. We got Greg alongside too, and you're our first NHL alumni, so that's exciting for us. Breaking down barriers here. I got to ask you first things first. Tell us what you miss most about playing.
What I miss most about playing, honestly, for me, probably the competition is the main thing. Just the whole process of getting ready for games, practices, training camps, and just being around a group of guys that you go to and battle with every single day, right? Whether it's in practice or in games. Obviously you get some good friendship, have a lot of fun, but it's a lot of hard work as well. But somehow it's weird to say, but you miss the hard work that you have to put in the gym and on the ice every other day.
I thought for sure you were going to say you miss playing Monday B League the most, but that's a fair answer too.
Yeah, no, not too much hard work on that one.
No back checks allowed.
Yeah. No back checking.
What do you think, you've got a son that plays and you've obviously been around the game for a long time. Where do you see the game going, in the next 5 years? Obviously you watch a lot being on the Blue Jackets broadcast. Where are we heading here?
I don't know, Dan. It's really interesting that's a great question, because these guys, you see these young guys coming in the league, and it seems that year after year, the veterans are not who's pushing the game forward. It seems like a lot of those newer players are the one that are kind of setting this benchmark. And it started with, Sidney Crosby, and then all of a sudden Ovechkin start working on that one-timer from that corner, and everybody was doing that. And then a little later, Connor McDavid came along with some speed that's never been seen before. That, along with incredible hockey IQ and incredible hands as well. So he's got the perfect package, and he's got size on top of it. And then last year we saw Cale Makar and Quinn Hughes changing the defensive side, and these guys are smaller stature defensemen. And Cale Makar is a prime example. I mean, he's got the explosion that you see on typical small forwards. He's got the smart. He's got a booming shot. So it seems like every other year the game is changing, and again it comes with these young prodigies that come into the league and kind of reset everything, and now all of a sudden everybody's try to catch up to it. So it's a very unique situation. I don't know of many sports that are being changed by young players like the NHL is, but so yeah, I couldn't tell you where the game's going, but all I know, it's getting faster, more exciting, definitely less physical, but it's definitely fun to watch.
That's really cool. I couldn't agree more. I feel like it's always the young people doing the changing. They just don't care anymore. They're just breaking through barriers.
Yeah, exactly. It used to be hockey used to be a game where you went in and it's all right, respect your elders and, go do your job and follow everyone. And now these guys are coming in and they're literally changing the way the game is played. So it's really cool to see.
That's a good segue. And honestly, I probably should have just started there to begin with. But why don't you tell us, like, your experience, your story from, your youth in Quebec, and how you made it, to the NHL and ultimately into Columbus. And like, I was just thinking about how, veterans kind of like led the way, and especially in like your era. And like, I think back to like the teams that you played on were like so like veteran laden, right, for the most part, and just like maybe your story and how you ended up playing on teams like that.
Yeah, it was definitely an interesting path. So yeah, so I'll start. You want me to start at the pro level or when I was a kid?
No, go.
Because
I know
that's
your
I
story,
could.
but
I'm gonna
tell the
tell you
people.
way back.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
not that
All right.
long ago.
Yeah. So I grew up Montreal. Obviously, it is kind of like the mecca of hockey, and both my parents were immigrated from Haiti, so hockey was not part of their background. But me being in Montreal, I started with playing soccer, and then after a couple of years, I decided to start hockey, and actually started with figure skating, believe it or not. So I actually did figure skating for a year before even touching a hockey stick, and then moved on to the hockey. So it was a little embarrassing. My dad was not aware of it, but I think it gave me a great base to be a good skater, in the future, because skating is really not something that I never worked on throughout my career. So I was blessed with good skating ability, I think, just from that 1 year of figure skating. And then, I started playing. I was not an elite player by any mean. I played like double A, double B, never been a triple A type player. So it was great. Uh, had some fun. My coaches were always somebody's dad, and we practiced a couple times a week and played 30 games a season, maybe, including tournaments, maybe plus tournaments. And but one thing that's funny you asked me, one thing I've noticed is the group of kids I grew up playing with and against, although we were all, some kind of like not super competitive, but, not rec league as well. A lot of them end up NHL players. So, you look at the Marty Biron, the Danny Briere, I'm trying to think, Roberto Luongo, JP Dumont, Denny Amel, all these guys are guys that I've played against or with. JS Jaguar was my goalie. These are guys that, and we all ended up in the NHL, and it's kind of weird that this whole group really made it all the way to the NHL, but it was literally, hockey was not our life. We loved hockey, but it was more a sport that we played for fun. And somehow we all ended up, at the highest level, which is very interesting. But anyway, so that took me to junior hockey, and junior hockey was a lot of learning. I remember my first year, I was underage. I was 16 years old. That was the first year that they did the underage draft. So I went from playing Bantam Double A to playing major junior against 21 years old. So, up to 20-year-old, 21 years old. So it was a big adjustment. I was about 6 foot and 155 pounds, and being a physical guy in Bantam and having to play against men, it was definitely a big adjustment going up there. And then from there on, played 2 year of junior, got drafted in the NHL, then finished my junior career 2 years later. So I played 4 years still junior and then turned pro. Got drafted by the St. Louis Blues and never played with the Blues. Went to one camp and they traded me to Buffalo. And then Buffalo is really when I grew up as a young man, young pro, the organization. So, we had, the Michael Pekkas, Dominic Hasek's, like a lot of really good veteran. Yeah. Yeah. James Patrick. So a lot of good veterans there that really surrounded me. That's really where I learned how to develop as a young player and especially as a young professional. And from Buffalo, went on, to Columbus, obviously, where I played for 4 years, and then finished up in Washington, D.C. And then after that, I can keep going, Dan. Went over and played in Europe for, I want to say 7 years, and those were probably my, the most fun I've had playing hockey, where, I was in Europe and I had a chance to, obviously, the cultural aspect of it was great. Learning about the international game was definitely something that was really, really big, and that really opened my eyes on skill development, because there's some skills that especially in my era, that in North America, we didn't really learn, and that was not really thought. And, all of a sudden I'm in my early 30s in Europe and relearning the game a completely different way. And now you're seeing all of that made it across to North America, and that's what we see in the NHL now.
That's fascinating. Well, maybe what were some of those things that they had over in Europe that you opened your eyes to? Because I feel like almost all people that become coaches from a playing day standpoint feel like they were better those 4 or 5 years after they stopped playing because they learned so much about the game. And it seems like you got it at the end of your career, and that probably extended it as well.
Yeah, and it's almost like when you're getting older and you're like, okay, I'm about to retire, and you're like, dang, I wish I would have known that 10 years ago. Because so for me, the biggest eye opener was when I was in Leksand and in Malmo in Sweden. And we had, so when I was in Leksand, just to give you an idea, we had Philip Forsberg. That was a young kid on the team. Oliver Ekman-Larsson was a defenseman on the team as well. Victor Rask, who ended up being a second-round pick as well, was on the team. So we had a lot of young talent. And I was trying to figure out, why is this small town can develop, so much talent? And I went and watched practice. And one of the things that's interesting in the U.S. is we see USA Hockey pushing on it a little bit more now about small ice, drills, right? So not using the full ice for practices. And in Europe, they have more ice rinks than you can dream of. But somehow, a lot of the practices, even all the way to junior, they would be using a quarter of the ice, maybe a fifth of the ice for some of their drills. And it doesn't make sense when you look at, the size of the ice in Europe, obviously being larger than here in the United States. Why are they doing this? And as you're watching these young guys skate with the puck, they're 17, 18 years old playing against men, at a professional level, and they never look down on the ice. Their head is always up. They can shoot the puck and see what's going on with literally scanning the ice 24/7, never looking down, being great skaters. Those small area drills definitely paid up. And, you see it right away when you see these European guys come. European guys used to come to, North America, and they're like, oh, we don't know if they're going to adjust to the small ice. It's not a problem anymore because they're used to play an even smaller ice surface in practices, obviously, just because of those drills.
What was the adjustment like for you going from the smaller ice to the big ice?
For me, it wasn't much of it was not that big of an adjustment.
Because figure skating.
Yeah, exactly. So figure skating and, being a good skater definitely helps getting from point A to point B. Yeah. So I never really got burnt that way. I think the reads was definitely the biggest thing because, all of a sudden I went from, playing in the States where, I'd average as a defenseman 15, 16 minutes a game, which is not much by today's standard. And then going to Europe where I was playing, 22, 23 minute every game. With the ice being larger, I couldn't chase around like a crazy maniac. I couldn't run out of gas. I was getting older as well. So you learn to read the game a little better. And so the adjustment, I would say it was probably a week, 2 weeks. And then I was okay after that.
I want to go back to something you said a few minutes ago when you were telling us about your childhood and your growth. What do you attribute all of those players from Quebec and that same area? And like you said, it wasn't like it was like, like a AAA super team or something that you see today. Like what made, that group so successful? And like, what do you attribute that to?
I think this is going to sound cheesy, but I think the fun, the aspect of just having fun and going to practice and, there was no, you need to win this game. And, everybody was playing. And yes, when games were getting tight, the bench maybe could get shortened up. But there was a lot of internal competition within the teams. But there was also, we're playing against great competition. And that's one of the things, with travel hockey, unfortunately, in the States. And I was talking to a parent at the chili the other day and he said, yeah, he was in Minnesota with his son this weekend for, just like a showcase. And for me, it just makes no sense because I never travel more than like 30, 45 minutes from my house to play any games unless it was in a tournament. And I was like, is it really worth it as a parent? And I'm glad my parents didn't have to go through it. But I think the fact that there was so much talent, or maybe just so many players in one area that we could play very competitive teams within the city was a big advantage. And I think the way the game was thought was great because it was just an activity. You know, it was a city ran type, league. So there was not, there was no politics involved. It was just fun for the players. And I think if the kids are having fun, they're going to develop. The minute it becomes a burden on them, that's when it's not so much fun. And that's how you see a lot of kids, getting around that 14, 15-year-old age, and they're burnt out because, unfortunately, hockey is also a business. And now you see some of these young guys, they're on the ice 12 months a year. I grew up being on the ice from September to March, maybe early April. Yeah, I think early April were state championships. And then after that, it was, I'd put my gear away. I'd play soccer, baseball, basketball, whatever it is. And then, first week of September, I'll go in the basement, find my hockey equipment and be like, all right, let's go back on the ice. And I literally did that all the way till I was 16. So, even my very first junior camp, I think I started skating a week before that. I didn't do specialized training in the summer, being on the ice. It was a completely different game. So you really didn't get burnt as a young kid with hockey, or whatever sport you played 12 months a year.
That's amazing. I love that fact. I know Gretzky was the same way. He put his bag away in the summer. Greatest player of all time. Threw his bag in the garage, didn't know where any of his stuff was, and played baseball. And actually, He wanted to be a baseball player. He says it today. He's like, I would have rather been a baseball player than a hockey player. I just happened to realize that I was a much better hockey player.
Yeah, I'm glad he picked hockey because he changed the game quite a bit. Yeah, for me, it was soccer. Honestly, I want to say, my 16-year-old year, I had to pick between I was 15. I had to pick between going to midget AAA camp and going to the national team for soccer training camp, which was in Mexico that year, which I ended up going to the midget AAA camp and I didn't make the team. So I went back and played Bantam. So that's how I ended up, dropping soccer altogether and going to hockey. Literally, I did not touch a soccer ball after that. But yeah, I was a dual sport athlete as well. I think it's just great because you can take some things from one sport, integrate in another sport. And for me, when you think about it, being a soccer player and running around all summer, that was my training, I guess, cardio-wise for hockey.
Yeah. I'm a big soccer guy myself. I picked it up late in life because the college I went to, University of Akron, my freshman year, they won the national title in soccer. And I think seven guys end up going on to the U.S. national team. And they're so good. So I picked it up and I realized how much transferred to hockey. There were so many elements of the vision and how the movements went that were so similar to hockey. Just adding that element of going over the top, I started throwing pucks over the top and allowing fast teammates to get under. I feel like my vision got way better when I picked up soccer. So I think there's even beyond just the cardio, there's that cognitive ability to develop.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, yes, you have more players on the soccer field. Sometimes it's a little like slower pace, but yeah, you learn the reads quite a bit on the soccer field because it's not like hockey where you can, oh boy, I missed this tackle. Now I got to recover. You can't run, 300 feet like you can catch up to someone on the ice. So, like you said, that cognitive, ability to be able to work on your angles. What's the shortest point for me to go from point A to, take that shooting lane away on the soccer field compared to the ice is very similar on the bigger, it's on a bigger, surface, obviously, but you learn a lot about these reads as well. Absolutely, Greg.
I'm curious. So you mentioned like the showcase and the conversation you had with this parent at Chiller. Like so that's like a how not to, right? And like modern day hockey parenting. I'm with you on that. What would be some advice that you might give like a miscellaneous parent if you like ran into him at Chiller? Like, what would you tell him?
What would I tell him? Oh boy.
Or what would you tell him if you could say whatever was on your mind? You know what I mean?
Yeah. So Dan, you know me because
Yeah.
you've coached my son Dan. So I will tell you, and I have a lot of parents that came to Belfry, and have talked to me now that their kids in high school, and Toby Cruel came to me, and his son is going to be a sophomore in high school, and he said, "Man, he's like, I learned the biggest lesson from you watching you with Denon." And I said, "What was that?" He's like, "I used to be so hard on my son, and I could see him starting to get frustrated, and now he's playing and he's having so much fun because I backed away." And for me, that's it. As a parent, you don't want it more than your kid. And unfortunately, and I think it's, you see it in anywhere. My daughter, when we lived in Boston, she was in cheerleading. And I remember my wife went to one, at the ad game, so I didn't go, but she was at a casino and they had a cheerleading thing. And she said the parents were absolutely nuts. And it's like they want it more than the kids want it. And unfortunately, you see that in sport now. It can be soccer, it can be basketball, it can be football, right? Everybody hope their kid's going to turn into a great athlete and is going to be, a pro or in the NFL or in the NBA or in the NHL, whatever sport that may be. But let the kid develop at his own pace and find his path. You can give him all the opportunities, right? You can buy him the equipment, get him the ice time, but don't push it on them. I was guilty of it. I coached Dan in his first year of hockey when he was a squirt, and it was an absolute nightmare. And my wife said, this should be fun. I said, yeah, it's going to be awesome. And then halfway through the year, I said, I'll never coach him again. And she said, why? I said, it's not fair for him because I'm harder on him than on the other kids. And it's just, he's not having fun. I just want to go to a rink and be a dad. And I want him to get in the car. If he wants to talk to me about the game, we'll talk about it. But I don't want to be that coach, right? Driving home and said, you should have done this instead of this, and you should have done this. Because that's not fun. And that's not how I was raised. My dad, he'd bring me to the rink and he'd say, hey, how was the game? And I'd say, it was good, it was bad. He had no clue what was going on the ice. And that's what I appreciated. And I want to give the same thing to my son. And I just wanted him, and I want all the parents, hopefully, to learn, hey, your kid has a coach. The coach most likely knows more than you or less than you, but at the end of the day, he is their coach. Let the coach do their thing and just bring your kid to the rink, pay your dues, and let the kid have fun. Just be a parent. Stop being a coach or a personal trainer to your kid.
Wow, that is well said, and I think that's absolutely huge. I don't know how many parents I see that want it more than the kids, and you're exactly right. Sooner or later, it just kind of burns out. But if the kid initiates it, they go so much further. And exactly how the car ride went with you, I think, is probably how it should go with every kid and parent on the way home. How was the game? Encourage. Right. Oh, I really liked you did X, Y, Z. All the other stuff, just turns them off from the game and giving the enjoyment from it. So that's well said.
It's just tough not to get caught up because I'll tell you, I'm guilty. So I do real estate, and I remember selling a house, and my buyer in their basement, the seller had this synthetic ice rink, and I was like, this is sweet. And they're like, we're gonna get rid of it because we want to put a gym down there. So I said, I'll buy it from you. So I bought all this synthetic ice and I put it in my basement, built the boards and everything. I was like, Denon, look at this. I got your own hockey training center. And it was so frustrating because he could not shoot the puck to save his life and he never used it. And I was like, go work on your shot. And after a while, I was like, listen to me. I want it more than you want. So I stopped. That thing collected dust for 3 years. Dan, you coached Dan, and that shot wasn't going anywhere. You
had a rocket. What are you talking about?
Yeah, right. Well, now he goes down there. Now he's in high school. He goes down there by himself and uses it all the time, man. Honestly, whether it's there or not, I don't care. But at the beginning when I built it, I was like, oh my gosh, I'm that parent. But I was just trying to give him the resources because as a kid, I remember I was shooting tennis ball in my basement and it was driving my dad nuts. And I wish I would have had something like that. So I provided to my son, but he's not me. So even myself, I catch myself sometimes being that parent, but you just have to control it. And, thankfully my wife is there to remind me, is like, hey, let the kid be, and it works out pretty well.
Yeah, I mean, I can say, like, from my own experiences just with you and with the program, like, I don't even think that you needed to say that out loud, because people, they know who you are, obviously. And when they see you, like, I don't want to say you're apathetic, but when you're like, you're not the one pushing Denon, that really, leaves a mark on them, because they're like, well, I didn't play in the NHL and he did, and he's not even pushing, like, his kid to be like something that he's not even interested in or whatever. So I think there's a lot there. Okay, so we've got advice for parents. Let your kid, kind of carve out his or her own path. We've got advice for players, which is go have fun. How about some advice for a coach?
For coach, I would say for coaches, yes, winning is great. Losing sometimes sucks, but losing is a great lesson for kids, because nowadays, our kids love success. Everybody loves success, but I think you learn through defeat much more about building character, how to bounce back, and really seeing improvement. If you're on the team that wins, 40 games a year, and then you lose one game a year, that one game feels miserable, but you don't really enjoy your success as much, because that's the norm. And yes, it's great, but I remember one year I was in soccer, not in hockey. And I still have that picture in my basement at my parents when I go home, because they have like this museum of Jean-Luc Grand-Pierre of all the medals and trophies I've won, because they're kind of like parents, so they're hoarders, and I'm an only child. And I have this picture I'll never forget. I was probably 8 years old, and we ended up being the state champion that year, but we did not lose a single game all season. And on the team picture day, we lost, and everybody's eyes were red because we're all crying. And it was an irrelevant game. It was not a playoff game. We lost it, and it hurt us that much. And after that, we learned from that. But I think when you're on a team and the beginning of the season, and this is my favorite scenario, season starts, and as a coach, you're getting players that may not be the best players, but you see the work ethic, they're listening to you. Take these kids before the kid that skates fat, scores a lot of goal, and kind of does his own thing, because your group will grow so much better with these guys that will listen to you, because if they're listening, they want to get better. When you have some good players, sometimes they think they know it all. They're going to do their own thing. It's really hard to mesh a team together. So as a coach, I say, lean toward developing young athletes and young, players, instead of taking the cream of the crop and try to run the score everywhere. It is so much more rewarding as a coach to see the improvement from the beginning of the year till the end of the year, instead of, seeing guys, on top of their game in training camp. But a lot of times these guys they'll plateau by November. And the only reason they plateau is because they're so good compared to the rest of the guys that they don't want to learn anymore. They're not going to listen because they think they got it all figured out. So as a coach, of course, have your kids have fun. They still need to listen. It needs to be serious sometimes, but really work on developing your players more than just winning games.
What you just said is so critical. It's not all about the wins. You can win when you lose, just based on the development. Those are some of my favorite games, is when we lose, because you can see the kids are tuning in a little bit more. They're listening a little bit closer, and what you say that day really propels them forward. It's amazing. So
yeah, it humbles you.
It really does. So I'm curious. So we're talking about coaching right now. Maybe taking from your coaches, because you had a bunch of them, I believe. Dave King, Bob Hartley, Lindy Ruff, Bruce Cassidy, and one of my personal favorites, Gerard Gallant. Who were some of your favorite coaches, and maybe what are the things that made them your favorite?
I would say Dave King was probably one of my favorite ones, because he was very demanding, He was fair. He didn't care if you were a rookie or a veteran. He was a guy that would tell you how it is, and a lot of guys didn't like it. But, kind of like Torts. If you sucked, he's not going to sugarcoat it. He's going to tell you suck. And if you were good, he's going to tell you you're good. Outside the arena, greatest guy. I have a lot of admiration for this guy. He would go on a run. He would go and jog every day. Every single day he'd go jogging. He broke his rib one time in Vancouver running, and he slipped on ice, broke his rib, and he kept that streak alive. I saw him in Germany, I want to say, 12 years after I played for him in Columbus. And he's like, I asked him about the running streak, and I said, is it still alive? He said, yep. He's like, I even coached in Russia, and I went and ran every morning. He had this routine, and he really stuck to it. But he was just a great man. I think he was a really good coach. He was really a student of the game. You always want to learn a lot about not only the North American game, but love Team Canada and love the international game in general. So he brought a lot of different things to, the locker room that a lot of other coaches didn't necessarily bring, just because of his knowledge of the international game. So I would say it was, as a pro, he was probably my favorite coach. My favorite person as a pro was probably Gerard Gallant. Nicest guy ever. I hope he finds a team to stay and, wins a Stanley Cup, because he was, obviously great. He was an awesome player to watch with Detroit when he played, but as a coach, he is such a player's coach. I think every player in the NHL would love to play for that guy. So that was probably my favorite person as far as a coach that was fun to have.
All right, who's your least favorite? No, I'm just kidding.
I can tell you.
Oh, really?
Yeah, give it to us. I want to hear this.
Hear it. Yeah.
I was not a fan of Bob Hartley, honestly. He was probably as unfair as a coach, not to me, but like the stuff that he did in that locker room, man, it was like he definitely him and he had a distinct dislike for Ilya Kovalchuk, and it was so apparent, and it was so unfair. And Atlanta at that time was a young team, not enough veterans, really to stand up to him. But yeah, it was borderline, abuse to watch him interact with Covey. And Covey was the nicest guy. And before I got to Atlanta, I heard all the stuff about Kovalchuk and, being selfish and stuff like that. And then until I played with him, I didn't realize how nice of a guy he was, how genuine he was, and how much he loved the game. And he was a hard worker as well. But it was just like, it's that easy to ruin a player's reputation, right? Just to say the wrong things to the media about a guy. But I think it was very unfair to Kovalchuk. So he was probably my least favorite just because of that.
That's interesting. I'm curious, because I've never asked you this before, but what was Atlanta like? Like, not just the city, but like, I'm looking at the roster now, and like Kovalchuk was 20, Danny Heatley was 22. Like, that's just a wild thing to think about. Like,
Yeah.
what was it like?
It wasn't good. It was a really weird time in the organization. That was after Snyder's death. That was the year that he got in that car accident with Danny Heatley. So he was hurt, rehabilitating his leg that year. It was just a weird cloud on top of the team. So yeah, it was it was not a great experience, honestly.
Well, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to ruin the mood. I have a follow-up though. You got to tell people you got to tell our audience the Scott Stevens story. Scott Stevens, Martin Brodeur story, the top 10.
So that was, I want to say it was 2002. It was a weird situation. So I don't remember, 2 days before the game, I get a call from my mom, and she tells me my dad is sick. And I was like, well, how sick? And she's like, well, it's like he got diagnosed with cancer and they're doing a surgery, in 2 days. I'm like, what? Like, it came out of nowhere. So next morning, we're flying to Jersey, and I go into Dave King's office. I was like, "Hey, Kinger, I'm sorry. My dad's getting, he's got this big surgery. He got diagnosed with cancer. Is there any way I can, fly over to see him, post surgery?" Kinger, being a great guy, is like, "Absolutely, family first. Don't worry about it." But we're playing in New Jersey, right, the next day. So I was like, "I'll just fly from Jersey." And he's like, "Yeah, no problem." So we play against New Jersey, and the game is tied. No, we're down by 1, and it's 4-on-4. And I talked to my dad before the game to see how he was doing, and he's like, "Yeah, don't worry, I'll be okay, but I'll be watching the game." And he kind of like, it was weak, and he's like, "Hey, make sure you score a goal for me." And I was like, "Yeah, sure." Like, I'm a goal scorer. so we're down 3-3, and it's 4-on-4, and I'm on the ice, and I don't know, I just kind of picked up the puck with speed, and 4-on-4, there's more room, and obviously I had good speed, and I just kind of start skating up the ice, and past one guy, another guy, and then next thing you know, I got oh my gosh, Ken Danico and Scott Steven, and I'm coming full speed, and at this point, I'm coming so fast. There's no way I'm gonna pull out, and I literally just try to get past Stevens, and somehow he missed me. And then, I'm going so fast through, and then, Marty Brodeur's in net, which, who puts Marty Brodeur against the Columbus Blue Jackets in 2002? Like, there's no reason for him to be in the net anyway. And basically put it top shelf on him and scored. And it was a cool goal. But for me, I think the moment, the fact that, I had that conversation with my dad before the game, and that I was flying to see him after, it was pretty cool. So the next morning when I got to Montreal, it was really cool because he just woke up from his surgery, and he kind of looked at me, and he's like, "I saw your goal. Yeah, I saw your goal last night, kid." I was like, "Sweet." So
that is the coolest thing.
Yeah.
I just not the same dramatics, but I had a game down in Columbus, and my favorite team as a kid was the San Jose Sharks, and the Sharks were playing the afternoon Sunday game against the Blue Jackets, and it's like begging my mom, like, "We got to stay after this game. We got to go see the Sharks." She's like, "All right, if you score, fine, we'll go to the game." Power play, I just go to the net as I see a shot going. Rebound comes straight on my stick. I really would have had to blow it not to put it in the back of the net, and got to go to a Sharks game. I still got the tickets, the game program, everything. Love those
awesome.
parent stories.
Yeah. Those are the greatest. And I think, as you talk about parents in hockey, for me, some of my greatest memories are those tournaments. When my son was, with Belfry, and I remember all the tournaments. My wife would make a point to stay home because, first of all, she hates the cold and she hates staying in hotels. So Denon and I always went out to tournaments, just him and I, and those were the best bonding moment. We still talk about it today, about all the good times we had in the hotels together, him and I, and learning how to drive at 12-year-old in the empty parking lot after a team dinner. These are all little bonding things that I think hockey is bigger than just the sport and making it to the next level. It's all these connections, with dad or mom, because, I'm a dad. I connect on certain things more than my wife will do on certain things, and vice versa. And for me, hockey was really that thing that brought us really, really close together.
How many games of knee hockey have you beat him in? I'm assuming it's countless by now, but I know I would keep track of how many times I beat my kid in knee hockey. Get out the mini sticks.
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of the knee hockey games. We played them. We played them back then quite a bit, but my knees would get pretty sore pretty quick. So I'd cheat and stand up and just crouch for most of it. So that would turn into full body contact knee hockey. So I definitely dominated. But now he's 6'4", so he might be able to take me on.
How's his gym sessions going? Better question.
Gym sessions. Nah, he doesn't go to gym. He's not he loves hockey, but he's not a kid that's going to be in the gym working out anytime soon. So, and again, that is okay with me. That's perfectly fine. when I was in his age at 16, I didn't even know what a weight was yet. So it's all good.
All right. I'm curious. So obviously, for those who may not know, but I would assume most of our audience does, you made the transition from player, obviously, to broadcaster. I'm curious, like, legitimately, I'm sure there's definitely pressure involved with being on TV or radio and all the things that come with that. Like, is it comparable at all to a game, or like, how would you compare or contrast those two things?
Oh boy. I would say I was more nervous during my first broadcast than I was playing my first NHL game.
No way.
Because it's not even close. So, hockey is you've been doing it since you're a child. So it's just a game. You're just playing against different people. Television is something that I've never done in my life before. And all of a sudden, you go from Billy Davidge, who's like a legend and everybody loves, to like, who's this guy? And it was, there's so many things in broadcasting that you would think would be simple. They tell you, relax, it's okay, just a conversation, but it's not. There's not only like the mic, you have the audio, and then you're talking to someone, and then next thing you know, Brian is talking to me, but also have a producer in our ear that is talking nonstop. And you're trying to think about what you're talking about, try to listen to the guy next to you, then you have the crowd in the background making more noise. It was, the transition was really, really hard. And I would say it probably took me about 30 games to get comfortable then. It was a big, big adjustment. And obviously, I would say by December, January, it became more natural. And then, by the end of the year, obviously, we're having all kind of fun because it's second nature, right? It's kind of like riding a bike. But I would say the transition was extremely hard. And it took a lot of patience from, I think, the viewers, from the Blue Jackets, from Brian, and from myself, honestly, because I'm somebody that, typically most of the stuff I do, I'm really successful at. And this one, man, it took me a while to really get my bearings. And it was a little frustrating, but really, really enjoyed the experience.
Well, I'm sure I'm speaking for all of us. You've done an amazing job, and we can't wait to hear you again next season, whenever that may be. You've done a great job.
Yeah, I can't wait as well. Yeah, it's it's so much fun. Always helps when you have some success stories with the team as well. And I think giving the climate that the team was on, in July last year when everybody left, and what they were able to accomplish this year definitely helped. So
for sure. All right, last final one to end on. We'll keep it light. How does it's the end of summer now, obviously. Like how was your golf game this summer? I saw you golf the other day with Jeff Svoboda from the Blue Jackets. He's a friend of mine. How was that? How's your game?
My game is not good. Actually, I'm actually going for a lesson tomorrow morning with Denon because I'm someone that's always been very proud and think that I know it all and I can figure out by myself. But this year I've been humbled. Didn't golf as much as I typically did, and yeah, I think golf is a game where it's competition against yourself, and you're so hard on yourself. It doesn't matter what the guy next to you shoots. It's all about you and what you're doing. And I just want to get better. So now I finally signed up to take lessons. I took one already 2 weeks ago, and then I got another one tomorrow. So that's how my golf game's going, Dan.
Golf is a humbling game. I hear you.
Yes.
Yeah.
Very, very
Just
mental.
a reminder, the ball does not move, so it shouldn't be that hard. The ball is very stationary.
Frustrating. It's so frustrating.
That's the frustrating part, is that you're like, okay, so I used to, shoot pucks that are moving, take one-timers without even looking at the puck, and now I can't hit a ball that is standing still in grass. But somehow we still find a way to make it hard.
Awesome. Well, this was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed the conversation. I know you and Dan have known each other for quite some time in the Columbus area, but probably don't know this quite yet, but we give 2 minutes at the end of every episode to plug anything you want or talk about anything. that you want. So 2 minutes is all yours. Whatever's on your mind.
2 minutes. Oh boy. Crash.
Or less.
So, or less. Well,
where can people find you? You know, stuff like that.
where can people? Okay, so you can find me at your local golf course, very likely, or I'm on Twitter at JLGP34. And for everybody listening, I got one for you. Dan, we didn't touch about it, but we're talking about, you know what? Let's back up here.
Let's back
We
up.
talked about skills, and your podcast talks about, the mental part of the game, how important that is. And one thing, we talked about B-League hockey, and one thing that I realized
There should be
in
an
the summer. No,
That's what you realized. Oh, okay.
in the summers, especially when I was pro, I remember I used to skate with a lot of like college guys or junior guys, AAA guys. And people don't realize the amount of skills that's in a game is ridiculous, obviously. But skills don't necessarily translate to success. And we'll see it in B-League all the time. You'll see some incredible hands, incredible speed, no smarts, right? And listen, I got hands of stone, and I'll admit it. But somehow the reason that a player can be more successful during games or scrimmages is all upstairs. It's about how they think the game more than necessarily their skill set. So I'm all about your kids learning, how to shoot a puck hard, how to, do the Kucherov and do all these moves and work on their hands and their skating, but have them learn the game, read the game, watch some games, watch your favorite player's positioning over the fancy moves and the skating that he's doing. It is so much more valuable. So this is what I'm going to leave you with. Let's think a little bit more about positioning, doing the little things right instead of all the flashy stuff. How's that for you?
Beautiful.
Perfect. Hey, we're going to have you back on where we'll talk more about that.
All right.
Absolutely. I go on that stuff all day. I mean, we have our newsletter out. We've been talking a lot about that. Dan's going to release here one about being on your offhand as a winger and how advantageous that is. So we're going to have you back on soon. Absolutely.
Offhand is the way to go. I learned it in the men's league, baby. Left wing, righty. It's
That's
all
right.
good.
Well, it's helpful when you can shoot a puck like you can, JL.
You got to learn new positions. Go play goalie.
Oh, I have. Don't worry. I got the equipment.
I did the same thing. My brother left town and he left his goalie bag here, so I've been playing tender. Love
the
it.
best. So much
it
fun.
Really is. Oh, I love doing the FU energy when you stop your buddies. It's the best. Absolute best.
Thanks for coming on. We really appreciate your time, and we'll catch you soon.
All right, guys. See ya.
See ya. Thank you for tuning into the Hockey IQ podcast. We are Hockey's Arsenal. Greg Revac and Dan Dukart. Together, we've come together to create a platform and a community to expand our hockey intelligence, hockey IQ, whatever you want to call it. We're very passionate about seeing this game played smarter and better and continue to develop itself to the next level and staying on the cutting edge of things. So you can find us at Hockey's Arsenal on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. We're also at hockeysarsenal.com. From there, you can find some resources and some options to work with us. We're excited to continue this. If you enjoyed this episode, please like, subscribe, follow, and share. You can also join up for our newsletter as well, where we're going to tackle anything Hockey IQ related. So we're excited to have everyone here and continue to build.